Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tom Grech from the Queen's Chamber of Commerce. Very happy to have you part of our program today called The Future of the Paycheck Protection Program, famously now known as the Triple P Program, and what's next for your business. We're joined by a couple of subject matter experts who are both not only chamber members but chamber friends, and that's Chris Calabrese of Calabrese and Associates, a public accountant, and Robert Intelisano, the founder and president of Intelisano and Associates, aka the Insurance Doctor. Before we plunge into the presentation today, thanks Chris and Robert for being here. A couple of things. First of all, today I want everybody to know on the program, we're honored to have you, and you should be honored to know this is my first day wearing a suit and tie in many, many months. So we're bringing back the economy one tie at a time, and we're doing it in a very professional, straightforward way. But all kidding aside, it's great to have folks on this program. A little bit of the history of the Triple P from our perspective at the Queen's Chamber of Commerce. You know, it's interesting when this thing was announced some time ago, back in the end of March, early April. We worked tirelessly to help companies of all different sizes be educated and learn about the program. And in an ironic twist of fate, the Queen's Chamber of Commerce is a 501c6. And of all the different not-for-profits, which are 501c3s for the most part, we helped hundreds of them get through the process. And the ironic twist is that the chamber, as a 501c6, was not eligible for Triple P money, which killed us because we're always happy to help members and non-members alike during that period. But we're still hopeful that maybe the next tranche of aid might include not-for-profits such as ours, 501c6s. But during that process, we were greatly challenged by the fact that aid was not coming to the small mom and pops. We enlisted the help of the Queen's congressional delegation, wonderfully led by Greg Meeks, Congressman Greg Meeks. He was joined by Tom Swazi, Carolyn Maloney, Grace Mang, I think I said Carolyn Maloney, Hakeem Jeffries, Nydia Velasquez. Even when Congresswoman Velasquez was suffering from the coronavirus, she jumped on board. And my message to them was, at our very first program in early April, I did a survey of our membership, and not a single member, not a single one, got funds. Some of them applied and got an acknowledgement. Some of them applied and got it's coming. Some of them applied and got nothing in the way of confirmations. And so, to the credit of our electeds, we had a follow-up meeting 2 weeks later, and I was happy to report then that the trees were shaken loose. Now, I'm not one to bash the large banks that had challenges, but I will tell you that the Small Business Administration, the SBA, which helped kind of administer this program over those course of those difficult months, told us that they received more applications in 14 days for this kind of aid than they had received in the previous 14 years. And so it was like drinking from a fire hose across the country. But we're proud to say once things caught up, due to the hard work of our elected officials and experts like Robert Intelisano and Chris Calabrese, the floodgates opened and almost everybody that wanted it got it. We read some crazy stories about people that got it across our country that were not necessarily the perfect candidates for it. A lot of that money went back. They were deemed eligible, but some of them, like places like the Harvard Endowment, gave the money back, which I thought was the right thing to do, so mom and pops could get the money. But I don't want to be an ad hominem conversation about that. But end of the day, it looks to me like the businesses we helped in Queens that got it, and that wanted it. And so to that end, now that people have got it and have spent it and are challenged by what do I do next, the chamber thought it was really important to bring together these experts in Chris Calabrese and Robert Intelisano to talk about where do we go from here? What have we done? Where we're going? And what's next? And so without further ado, I'm happy to introduce our friend, Robert Intelisano, who I happened to meet at a St. John's basketball game. I think his dad's an alumni and a huge fan of the Johnnies. And I met the dad and it was like, you want to meet my son. And so that's what we do at the Queen's Chamber of Commerce. I met the dad. He's a terrific guy. He raised a nice young man in Robert. And all kidding aside, Robert, your family's wonderful. Thanks so much for being here. The floor is yours, Robert Intelisano.
I appreciate it, Tom. And what I'm going to do is just give a slight background as to how I got involved with this. And then there's just one picture grid I want to take a quick look at to give folks an idea of, I always like to look at the other perspective. We do this in insurance too, like what's the insurance company's perspective? So if you know both or 2 or 3 sides perspectives, it really will help you as far as your own strategy is concerned. So I remember this first came out, they signed the act on March 27th, which was actually a week after my birthday. And, I had a conversation with one of my business partners over that weekend, and, people are already, it was about 2 weeks into coronavirus, and people were like, they were already starting to be a little stunned, and some people were just a little kind of paralyzed and what to do about it. And so I said to myself, my own clients, I have to protect my clients. So I could either stay on the couch and drink beer, get fat and watch Netflix, or become an expert on the Triple P and help my clients apply and get the money and hopefully get forgiven. And, so they can drink beer, get fat, which also saves our accounts, so everybody wins. That was the original plan. We've done a ton, and a lot of chamber members. Tom, I know a couple of panels I was on with you already. We're doing strategy sessions with businesses to get a feel for the situation. One of my great mentors used to say the situation is the boss. So, take a look at the situation and then see what we can do about it. And, it's good to talk these out, get multiple eyeballs. One of my first recommendations to business owners with this, as far as getting forgiveness, get multiple eyeballs on the case, call guys like Chris, whoever you may be dealing with on an accounting side, have other people look at it, because depending on which application you fill out, some are going to be easier than others. Jackie, I want to share a picture on the screen. So
sure, you can share the screen.
Let's see here. Get to my.
Here we go.
Okay. Oh, that wasn't what I was looking for. Desktop. All right. All right, here we are. All right, so just want to take a quick look at the loan chart. So while I'm looking at this, I look at this, and this is a snapshot of everything that's going on with the Triple P. So when you study it, and I apologize, it's a picture, it's an actual JPEG, but when you look at it, and I'm trying to look at it from the government's perspective and banks, what would be my objective? So they, originally, and Chris will cover some of this, but they're saying last week another rule came out where there's going to be a simplified form called the 3508S, as in Sam, and that's for folks that receive 50,000 and under. So if you look at the grid, smart move. That's 3.5 million less audits that they're going to have to do. They probably don't have the personnel to do all these audits. So I'm looking at this, I'm saying, okay, 3.5 million that receive 50,000, and that's 68% of all the number of applications, which accounts for 12% of the total amount. Now, there's another number that you don't see here. 1.7 million of those had 0 or 1 employees. But when I'm looking at this chart, if you look on the right-hand side, the percentage of the amount, it really starts kicking in at the $150,000 mark. So if you see
Robert,
150,
Robert, let me interrupt you. It's not showing yet. It's still buffering to open up that JPEG.
Oh, really?
Is it open on your screen?
Yeah.
Try to share the actual document. Do the share screen, and you'll see a document. And while you look for that, some of the questions are about your chart hasn't opened yet, so we appreciate that from our audience. But listen, I want folks to be able to ask their questions in real time. I promise you this, that we have a large number of people on this call, which is wonderful. I want to make sure that every question gets answered. So make sure that you ask those questions via the chat or via the Q&A box. And if we can't do it live online, I promise you we will get to you by email after the show. So Robert, let's
is it still so you can't see
not
that right now? You can't see that?
No.
Okay. I'm going to have to just give you the numbers then. So the bottom line is, if you look, well, they break it up into 150,000. So what I think is going to happen is, I think they're going to raise that number. The stock market's down huge today. Part of the reason is because Nancy Pelosi announced that they don't have an agreement on the triple P, on the second funding of the triple P. There is 134 billion that's unspent that was congressionally approved. So there's a lot of money that's still sitting there that has not been approved. I'm going to stop the share and just talk about it, I guess, then. That's unfortunate. So what I think is going to happen is that they're going to raise the amount. I would suggest that, you know, people, especially if you're under that 50,000, like I myself am personally, you know, some people just want to rush and get an answer. I would sit tight because there's a lot of pressure on both sides of, you know, of the political spectrum. You know, people have been left hanging, in my opinion, since July 31st. I mean, they knew that the money was going to run out. They changed. There was, I believe, 9 interim rulings. You know, you're trying to hit, we talked a little baseball before this started. It's like you're trying to hit a curveball and then they throw you another curveball. So I would sit tight. My first recommendation would be to sit tight and see what comes out of this. You know, in most situations, you have plenty of time, even if you receive the money before, I believe it's June 6th. You know, it depends on when you receive your money, but you know, they extended the period, the covered period from 8 to 24 weeks. So, you know, we're still going to be in that covered period time. I know people want to get it off their mind that they're going to get it, you know, they're going to not have that loan over their head, so to speak, but you still have time. You have 10 months until you start accruing interest. So there's no reason to wait when the pot could very well be sweetened. Perhaps, you know, parties might want to buy votes, whatever they choose to do. But it's not going to get worse. The deal is going to get better, in my opinion. Right now, there are 3 actual forms, 3 different forms, which I believe Chris will touch on. But, you know, depending on the type of business, the nature of the business that you're in, and the loan size will dictate which particular form that you fill out. So, you know, it's important to have good representation and advisors. I've seen a lot of advisor failure over these last 6 months or so. And there's another rule I want to touch on too, which is called the 60-90-60 rule, I call it. So the institution, they have 60 days. Once you fill out your application, you submit it. The bank has 60 days to look at it. The bank renders a decision. Then there's a 90-day, the government can look at it for 90 days. There's an appeal process there. And then once they make their decision, you have 60 days to appeal. So if you're doing the math, you're talking about 210 days. It's a long time. So there's no rush. I would wait, see what else comes out, see who wins the election. I think, you know, what we talk about today could look very different a month to a month and a half from now. So I'm explaining to my clients, especially those that are under 50,000, you know, wait and see what happens. It's not costing you money to wait right now. You have 10 months until the 1% starts to accrue, and you know, see if they can sweeten the pot.
Great. Robert, we have a couple of questions I want to pose to you.
Sure.
If I'm a self-employed with a Schedule C and the triple P loan amount was $20,000, what form do I need to use to ask for the forgiveness?
Yeah, that's the new form, the 3508 S as in Sam. That's the new form, the streamlined form. I'm actually, I printed it out. I'm looking at it, really easy. It's really 3 pages, but one of the pages is actually instructions. It's a very simple form. You're going to be pretty happy when you see it. If you haven't seen it already, we can you know, send it to all the participants. But it's the new streamlined form 350 EZ, E as in Edward, Z as in Zoo, 3508 S as in Sam.
If you wouldn't be so kind at the conclusion of this thing to email it to Jackie, we will get it out, that form, just for, you know, edification to the
absolutely
RSVP. That'd be great.
What I'm going to do also, Tom, as a bonus, which we haven't talked about, but there's a really good article from the Journal of Accountancy, and I will send the link to Jackie along with that form, so they can, you know, it's in layman's terms, even though it's from the Journal of Accountancy, and Chris can touch on that, but it's a pretty good explanation as to, you know, how it works and why they're setting it up.
That's great. I'd like you to, once we turn over to Chris, you can figure out a way to get that form opened up. A lot of folks want to see that chart or that grid. But I'm going to ask you one more question before we pivot over to Chris for an introduction, sign of an update from him. This is I thought this was a very clever question and a very important one. If a business is sold, does triple P have to be paid in full, including EIDL advance? And if so, when?
I'm not sure about that answer on business being sold. I did not see that in any of the FAQs. Perhaps if Chris, you may have an idea on that.
I haven't seen anything in particular on that. I would think as long as the corporation still exists, then it's basically like entering into a loan, entering into any normal loan with a bank. So you have loan documents, you have a closing and whatnot. So if somebody were to buy a corporation, that corporation continues to exist, then the loan continues to exist under that corporation. If for some reason the business was to cease to exist and a new corporation was to open up, that would be something we'd probably have to research a little bit further as to, does the loan transfer to the new business? Does it have to be paid at that time? Because the corporate, when you dissolve a corporation, all of its debts should be paid at that time. So I'd have to research a little bit what would happen if that came to pass that way.
Interesting though, that you think about it, right? We've been in suspended animation as a country and a region since March. Business, acquisitions and disposals happen all the time. So I think it's a really important discussion to have and kind of try to find an answer. I'm going to pivot over to Chris for a second. Robert, if you wouldn't mind trying to find that form, because inquiry.
I will find the form. One thing I want to mention before it goes to Chris, there are lobbyists right now that are they're, I guess arguing would be the word, to raise the 3508S form to 150,000 from 50. Unfortunately, you couldn't see that chart, but they would save a tremendous amount of audits by doing that. And when you're looking at the percentage of applicants that are over 150,000, it's much smaller numerically. So they would, it's to their advantage to do so. And I think there's a decent shot it may happen. So if you're over 50 and under 150, I would sit tight.
Excellent. So Robert, thanks for that. And we're going to pivot now to Chris Calabrese to kind of give an overview. I know Chris has got a PowerPoint of some sort. And before we put that thing up there, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself, your time of service, and a little bit about your practice.
The name of my firm is Calabrese and Associates. I've been on my own since 2005, but I've been a CPA for 26 years now. And we really focus on small businesses, bookkeeping, payroll, tax planning, succession planning, estates, of course, the taxation of the individuals who own the business as well, trying to keep their tax burden as low as possible. All of the functions that go into running a small business.
So taking a page out of the title of this event, what is next for the Triple P? What is next for businesses, large and small, who may have had the opportunity, I'm going to use the word opportunity in quotes, to actually get Triple P money?
Well, what's next is forgiveness. So let me share the screen and get into forgiveness a little bit.
Great.
Okay. And if I hit share, everybody can see that?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Triple P 2.0 looks great.
I already talked a little bit about myself and what I do, and that nice picture there, so we'll scan past that. So some of the things in here you're going to see Robert already touched on, and that's great because these are all points I actually want to hammer home. So having them come twice is a good thing. PPP, we know, is the Paycheck Protection Program. It came from the CARES Act, passed back in late March. Most people got 2.5 times their average monthly payroll. So that's how much people received. So companies with large average payrolls were able to get a pretty decent sized loan. The rate, as Robert said, is 1%. And the payback period is either 2 or 5 years, depending upon when you receive the loan. They passed the second act June 5th. That act, from there, those people had 5 years. People who received the money before June 5th have a 2-year payback period, but all payments are deferred for 10 months from when you receive the loan. And as we're going to get into, the loan can either be completely or partially forgiven if you use the funds the proper way. PPP loan is not. A lot of people get confused. There was also the economic injury disaster loan, which is separate, and there was an advance given with that as well. And those loans are separate from a PPP, and there is no forgivable aspect. If you received one of those loans, you're going to have to pay that back. Okay, so how do we get it forgiven? First, we fill out the form that Robert just spoke about, the 3508. And as they came out about a week and a half ago with the 3508S, which is for people who got loans $50,000 and less only. And we'll get into that a little bit further. Getting into the specifics of those forms is a whole different presentation. Another thing that's important is to find out if your lender is even accepting these applications yet. As I did a little research, I found out that Capital One's not even accepting them yet. Chase is only accepting for loans. It's actually greater than 50,000, not less than, because they want to wait on the $50,000 loans or less, like Robert said, to see if legislation is passed. TD and Bank of America is already accepting them. You want to get the loan forgiven, they want certain eligible expenses, and those fall under a period of the 24 months after you receive the loan. So you can't really even start to ask for loan forgiveness until 24 weeks have passed. Note that you can use an 8-week period if you got the earlier loans prior to June 5th. Those eligible expenses are payroll, mortgage interest if you own where you are, or rent if you're renting where you are, and utilities. 60% of those expenses, though, have to be payroll. Again, like I said, you can't apply until the 24-week period ends. So here's where the crux of my presentation comes in. There's a tax consequence for forgiveness that a lot of people don't know about. The IRS says the PPP loan forgiveness is not taxable income. As you know, if you have some sort of debt, like credit card debt that gets forgiven, that's taxable income. The IRS says the PPP loan forgiveness is not, but they're saying that any expenses that you use to get the forgiveness, the payroll, the mortgage interest, the rent, the utilities, are not deductible. That's like double dipping, and therefore your taxable income will increase. Here's an example to show it. Say you have business income of $100,000 that's taxable, as it usually is. You receive forgiveness of $20,000 on a PPP loan. That's not taxable. Your total revenue is 120, but your taxable is only 100. If you have expenses, typically $60,000, that would be deductible, but you use 20,000 of those to obtain this $20,000 PPP loan forgiveness. Those become not deductible, and you're going to see your income goes up by 20,000. So in a typical year, your income would be 40,000, but by using $20,000 of those expenses to obtain forgiveness of this loan, you've now increased your taxable income to 60,000. Now, this is what Robert said. As of the loan itself can't change, but the taxability could be changed by future legislation. And Robert was 100% right. There's definitely going to be some sort of law or something passed after the election, probably within a month after the election, that is going to give additional stimulus money, additional funding of PPP loans, and could change the taxability of these loans. And like Robert said, the forgiveness of these loans. So basically the same tip that Robert gave, if your loan is $50,000 or less, and even like Robert said, $150,000 or less, it's probably best to wait and see if additional legislation passes that could provide, there could be automatic forgiveness. So if your loan was $50,000 or less, you don't need to fill out any forms. And as we know, these forms, if you've looked at them, can be a little bit overbearing. You definitely need professional help to fill them out, a lot of companies. So having to fill out no forms would be a huge, huge help. So again, loan, how do we here at my firm, we do the forgiveness applications for people. There's significant bookkeeping involved with that, and of course tax planning. So that's basically the whole presentation.
So Chris, leave that page on there right now so people can see your contact information, Christopher Calabrese, and his phone number and email address. So riddle me this. I spent a whole bunch of money on making my business safe, panels, PPE, masks, all that stuff to make sure that I can open up my restaurant, retail establishment, whatever else. Those are all business expenses and therefore deductible?
Yes, those are all deductible business expenses, supplies, leasehold improvements, those types of things, and they are 100% deductible. Sure.
So as an accountant and somebody who has, obviously like most Americans or all Americans file their taxes, I think the most important thing to think about is to figure out, number one, save the receipts for all this stuff, categorize it in a certain way, right? Any other tips you can give to a business, large or small, regarding what they spend on that stuff?
Make sure you pay for them out of your business account. Use your business credit card, use your business checks. So this way everything's grouped together, because if you're paying for them personally, it could bring into question whether, it's hand sanitizer. Well, is this hand sanitizer for your house or for your business? Theoretically, you could use business funds to buy things for personally, but it's, it's the legitimate way to pay for business expenses.
Okay. So I want to pivot to a question for Chris.
Can I add to that real quick before you
course.
jump to a question?
No, please.
So, right from the beginning, we were advising businesses, when you obviously you want to have a good relationship with your banker, but we advise to get a debit card from that business account where the money is and use the debit card and just spend it down. This way you're not shuffling from different accounts. You're documenting all of your expenses from that one particular account. It'll be a lot easier for someone to review and a lot cleaner. And the cleaner it is, the less chance you have of getting a deeper dive, so to speak.
So this question is for each of you. Do you have any information on EIDL forgiveness? Let's go to Chris first, then Robert.
There is no forgiveness on the EIDL.
That's pretty
That loan, if you took an EIDL loan, you have to pay it back eventually.
Okay, so that really wasn't much of a question for either one of you, but Chris, thanks for answering it. Another one, how does the taxable issue impact not-for-profits?
It shouldn't affect them because they shouldn't be paying taxes.
We all
So,
file 990s, right? As a not-for-profit.
Yeah, they'll be filing 990s and they should be, that would be deemed part of their exempt function, and they shouldn't be paying tax on that.
Okay, here's one for Robert. And by the way, folks out there, got a large number, almost 40-something folks on this call, which is great. Thank you for being here. This is for Robert. What if you hired your staff after you got your triple P and the 8-week period expired?
Depends on when you got the triple P. June 5th is the cutoff. So if you received the money after June 5th, you got the extension automatically. You didn't have to apply for it.
Yeah, 24 weeks.
Great.
So it depends on when you receive the money. But if you received it before June 5th, you can still work, you can still request getting the extension on that.
Yep.
Excellent. So Robert, are you able to share that form, that thing, or no? You muted yourself.
Yeah, it's a JPEG picture, but I'll send it to Jackie to
Awesome, no problem. So as we continue this conversation, we're getting a bunch of questions here. Some folks are asking to have the advisors on this call reach out to them directly. I personally would prefer if, and I think it's the professional way to do it, is you got contact information for Chris Calabrese and Robert, so feel free to contact them directly. I'm going to see if Jackie's going to. Somebody asked a question about, at this point, is there any other funding available? I have not received anything yet.
They're going, as of right now, the PPP program is not issuing new funds, but like Robert said before, they are expecting to reopen up the program again.
It ended on August 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And that cutoff changed a few times, just as lots of things have changed, and we expect, as they say, the only thing constant is change. There's still, $134 billion that was congressionally approved that has not been dispersed. So there is money there, and we expect at some point for them to release the hounds, so to speak.
So a comment from me, if you don't mind, I had heard from a statement from Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin that there was well over 300 billion with a B funds left over previously authorized. We have been advocating for the $120 billion Restaurant Act for folks out there. And we've been kind of doing it in a real simple, direct way about, do the math, America, take the 120 from the 380, right? But we know there's political consequences to that. There's issues right now in DC. Do either one of you have any knowledge about what the present condition of that Restaurant Act passage is, or anything else regarding other funding coming our way? I know you can't really prognosticate, but I know you guys are pretty well connected. What do you hear and what do you understand? Chris, we'll go first. Anything?
Yeah, I don't know of anything out there that is going to happen. My best guess is we're not going to see anything until this election is done.
I have to agree with Chris on that. There was time. I've been following this very closely right since the beginning, really. And they decided, they put the time into getting Coney Barrett up on there, and that, they didn't have enough time to do both. And I believe that was the decision that was made, and which left us, hanging again. But I do think what's going to happen, and they've been bouncing it back and forth with both political parties, not only the 134 billion, but they're gonna have to replenish that triple P and have another round. I mean, I can't see them not doing it.
I would tend to agree with you. Here's a question. I'm going to go to Chris first, and if Robert's got any color commentary, because some of these answers they're pretty straightforward, so I don't want to have both of you answer the same question twice. Is there a deadline, Chris, to submit that form 3505?
Yeah, I believe the deadline is it's right around the time that you have to start paying the loan back. So you have about 10 months to file that.
Okay.
There's absolutely no
He's
rush.
right on the money. It's 10 months from the end of the covered period.
Excellent. Once the SBA program reopens, do we know if we can apply for a second loan or grant if you've previously received a triple P loan?
I see no reason why not. Originally the Paycheck Protection Program. I mean, specifically designed to temporarily pay employees while this whole thing shakes out. So I see no reason why, if you already got one loan, where that would count for or against you getting more money.
Gotcha. This is more of an HR question from a member of ours who I know. We're going to keep the name confidential because they're asking confidentially or privately. This is a multi-pronged question, but it's more of an HR legal thing, I think, but it has ramifications always for finance. What if you had an employee who could not come in due to a shared bathroom, feared the COVID and would not come in? They're still collecting unemployment. What would I need to do to have this employee to get the triple P forgiven? So it's clearly somebody that's getting unemployment, probably enjoying that $600 a week spike. The question is basically about can I get that piece of the triple P forgiven?
Yeah, unless you hired somebody else to take their place. If it's not on your payroll, whether you use ADP, do your payroll yourself, but everything's going to come off of your actual payroll reports, your 941s, your NYS 45s. So if they're not actually on your payroll, then it's not going to go towards forgiveness. So if they're not working for you and they're on unemployment, it's not going to count towards forgiveness. And I know some people out there are also, paying people off the books as well, who, may be, collecting unemployment. Again, that's not going to count. It's going to come right off of your payroll reports.
Yeah, I would add to that also, if you're under the 50,000, there was a rule change where it's not going to count against you if you reduce salaries or you reduced your head count. So, yeah. And again, I really hope that they move that up to the $150,000 limit. But those folks that are under 50 and couldn't, whatever their situation was, and they couldn't keep the same amount of employees on the books, that's not going to count against them.
Yeah, one comment about that $600 a week addition from the feds on top of the current or the state mandated numbers. I found it very ironic that during the crux of this pandemic, when it was really bad back in the months of April, May, June, July, many people, at least members of the Queens Chamber of Commerce, were trying to hire people and could not, because people did not want to come back to work because they were making, in some cases, more by staying home with that kicker. And I think that definitely skewed the numbers about unemployment. And to a person, none of my businesses felt necessarily comfortable going to the Department of Labor. But I do understand the way the rules work is if you were offered employment, you were supposed to take it. Is that correct?
Absolutely. If you're offered employment and you refused it, theoretically you should not still be receiving unemployment. And that's gonna, that's a slippery slope, because now the employer would have to protest directly to the Department of Labor, and it becomes almost more of a burden on the employer than the employee. But you're 100% correct. If someone is offered employment, that should make them ineligible for unemployment going forward.
And
Yeah, I agree. And that 600 was, that number was high. And they dropped it to 3 subsequently. But also, and I wrote an article on this, if you look at all the states in the country, you're amazed at the difference as what the cap is for unemployment numbers. I mean, Massachusetts had the highest number. I was thinking, I don't like Boston teams, so I couldn't go there. But, it's a huge difference from state to state as to what the cap is for unemployment.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And I also know that from what I'm learning from you guys today, and previous to this, from both Robert's missives he sent out, it really kind of hurts the employer, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, the unemployment goes against you.
Yeah, no question. I want to give folks a chance, and I know we're co-hosted here by Jackie Donato, who has just done a fantastic job over these months, over the years, frankly, for the chamber, but especially over these last few months. Jackie, I think we can see you. You want to give a little bit of a wave so we know who you are? She
does a great job.
She's wonderful.
Thank you.
I'm blessed.
Thank you.
We're all blessed and lucky to have her. She's done a great job. But as we think about, Jackie, if you wouldn't mind tagging our guests, the 40-something participants, and encouraging them to ask more questions, I want to just take like no more than a minute or two to ask these two good guys who have become friends about their thoughts about the 2021 Mets with the potential new ownership. So they both smile when I said that, because Intelisano, I know, is a diehard, as is my friend Chris Calabrese. So I'm going to give Robert the first shot for a 30-second update on the 2021 Mets. Robert, what are your thoughts?
I love when you put me on a spot like this, especially when it's sports, and there are a lot of parallels between sports and business. I'm under the impression that de Blasio is going to block that, because there is a rule about any one of your subordinates with any type of lawsuits. I don't want to get too much into it, but I think he's going to try and block it.
Steve? I would say because he's a Red Sox fan. That's why.
Well, that's already assumed.
So, Chris, what are your thoughts?
Ignorance is bliss.
Chris, what are your thoughts about the 2021 Mets?
I just want Steve Cohen to spend that beautiful money. George Springer. That's who I want. George Springer. Bring him in.
Well, there you go. Two diehard Mets fans that are both.
Robert, are you serious that de Blasio is going to block the sale, or are you just teasing?
No, I'm not teasing. There's a couple articles about it. There is a rule, whereas if anyone within your organization committed a crime, there was someone in his organization that was, I believe, charged with a felony. And, they're digging deep to try to, I guess, people that don't want this deal to happen. And where technically they could block it on that technicality.
I hope that never comes to pass.
I hope so too, but I mean, people get this information. That's what you get for tuning in, not just the Triple P.
But two good baseball players. So guys, we've got some more time going, but I want to make sure there's been a number of new questions, but some of them have been repeats. So Chris, I don't want you to sum up until we get more questions, but Chris, any more comments on what the pratfalls and the pitfalls of the Triple P and things you're advising your your clients to look for and to avoid, or frankly, to embrace?
You know, when it was still open, I was encouraging my clients who qualified to go for it, get the loan. And, you know, we've been in kind of a dead period since August 8th. And now it's time to, you know, it's time to take stock of how you spent that money and start to prepare for forgiveness. You know, I'm telling people just like Robert to hold your horses, take a deep breath, and wait to see if further legislation is. And then, if additional funding comes to pass, then sure, if you qualify, go for it. It's you know, 1% that could be forgiven. And you know, I spoke about the tax effects of it, but again, that's a tax effect. One of the most important things I always tell people is never make a business decision based upon taxation. If you're paying a lot of tax, that means you've done well. And you know, never try not to do well just for tax reasons.
Robert, any thoughts as well about things to look out for, things to engage with, things to
Yeah, absolutely.
wary
I do.
of?
First of all, I like that advice, Chris. I really like that a lot. That advice. People, you know, they'll buy and sell stocks, but they don't want to do it because they don't want to pay the tax on it. I mean, I like your advice. A couple of things, yeah, Tom. So originally, you know, I took tons of calls. It's amazing when you do strategy calls. A lot of chamber members, existing clients, of course, and you know, and these calls, which usually run between 15 and 30 minutes, but you learn a lot. Not only from they learn from me, but I learned from them. So I was advising clients to get, you know, apply and try to get as much money as you can. Figure out how you're going to use it later. You could always give it back. You have a time frame where you can give it back. And you know, they changed the rules so many times. You know, I myself received money. I received the maximum of that $20,833. And you know, originally they had a lot of other allowable expenses on it, which kind of shrunk. So I would recommend, as much as you can just use for payroll, use the highest percentage you possibly can for payroll, and then start, you know, utilizing some of the ancillary expenses. That would be like the number one thing I would talk about, is use as much as possible for payroll.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Re-
I'm going to ask you, Chris, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Record keeping is very important in this. You know, you have to make sure you keep good records, especially when it comes to payroll, rent, and utilities, because, you know, if you can't back up the expenses, then, you know, you could end up losing forgiveness.
Absolutely. I want to ask you guys each a general question. I'm going to go to Chris first and then Robert. Chris, you touch tax returns. You touch, quarterly and annually, and you touch a lot of customers. I know who you are. We've got a friendship outside of this presentation. We know each other pretty well. I am really keenly interested in learning about, what is your perspective? What are your clients telling you? And what are you seeing in those quarterly tax returns regarding the economic situation right now for your clients, without divulging any, confidential information? What do you see? Are things good and getting better, bad and getting worse? Just what is your perspective?
You know, I wish there was one general trend, and I wish it was positive, but it's multiple. I have certain clients, believe it or not, especially in the food service business, that had their best months ever, not just, this year, but in the history of their businesses, in March, in April, because people were ordering food from them in record numbers. And then there's also some businesses that just weren't able to continue to conduct business in the shutdown environment, and they weren't able to get money, and they weren't able to, it just wasn't feasible for them to continue. And some businesses, struggled really bad. Some completely went out of business, but it's very dependent upon, the situation. Me being an accounting firm, I saw, I saw business crawl to a halt in March and April, especially once they pushed the tax deadline back. And then it picked up big time in July 15th. And since then, people have taken a step back in terms of what services they want, because they really have to take stock of, where they're at. some businesses, it's business as usual, or it's even better than that. So it's definitely very dependent upon the line of business.
Right. Robert, what are your thoughts about the same question?
Yeah, I would agree with the majority of that. A lot of it depends on, I don't see businesses that have stayed the same too much. Like you have certain businesses, for example, real estate attorneys, refinancing, loan officers. I mean, I did a refi myself. Money is cheap. Anyone who's doing any type of loans, doing really well. CPAs should be doing well. I notice a lot of people are like starting to shift and change advisors, whether it's an insurance advisor, financial, CPA, whatever. A lot of advisor failure I've seen, and certain businesses are really struggling. So I think people either improved or regressed. I don't see that it stayed the same, and they need to make adjustments accordingly.
I think you're spot on. It's interesting. Jackie and her team were doing virtual outreach for a while, and then we were doing in-person outreach, giving out, the PPE we talked about, the masks and so on. And it was fascinating to see, up and down the avenues, up and down the boulevards of Queens, what was open and what was not, what was kind of thriving and what was not. And this story I'm going to tell you is kind of an anecdotal story, which truly shows the improbable ways that this COVID has affected people. So I went to my local beer distributor to buy a case of beer sometime in, I guess it was August. And I went to go buy one of my favorites, which is Coors Light. And the Coors Light case is normally in that silver bullet kind of a look, the silver kind of foil look to the box with the red logos, Taste of the Rockies, what have you. This isn't an advertisement for Coors Light, but that's what the box normally looks like. So I go to the distributor, and I know the guy. I talk to people, as you can imagine, and as you both know. And I said, "What gives with the plain brown wrapper on the box? Are things so tight out there?" He goes, "You really want to know?" I said, "Of course. I'm a student of business, and I'm a curious person about business. And why is it not silver? Why is it basic brown?" He goes, "Because the restaurants and the bars across the country are closed. They made a decision to start shipping the stuff that they had bottled within the time frame of expiration, right? That was destined for bars and restaurants in a nondescript, like a plain brown box, to retail, because it wasn't being sold to restaurants. The non-marked, the non-fancy schmancy silver box, they weren't making them anymore because they had to get rid of the volume they had with the plain brown boxes. And I thought to myself, wow, if it's trickled down to the beer distributor level, where they're actually thinking about the packaging being less expensive and then pivoting and taking their own little supply chain that normally goes to bars and restaurants in those plain brown boxes. I mean, it said Coors Light on there, right? But very black and white, very nondescript, no marketing, right? But you send it to a bar, it goes under the bar, you crack open the box and you give out the beers, right? I just found that remarkable, because you think about the impact on the trucking business, on the printers, on the brew, on everybody within that supply chain. And when we talk about the fact that, we're all in this together had different variances in certain different areas, right? I think our restaurants got hammered really, really badly, and all their suppliers, while the food service places, I know, like, killed it in many respects, just killed it. So just an anecdotal comment, again, as a student of and a creature of looking at habits, I find that kind of stuff remarkable.
It is. That's why lobster was so inexpensive, because there was no restaurants that were open selling it. So lobster, a lot of farms were burying their crops. I mean, it was a really bad situation. Just to add to that, out west right now, they're doing this already, but they're already experimenting with driverless trucks. And they have the technology. It was on 60 Minutes. I've read it a few other places as well. And, because I believe it's 60 or 70% of all of our goods are trucked.
One of the good outcomes of all this, if I may say, is that I learned through some testimony I gave up in Albany virtually about so there was huge food lines in Queens, in New York City, which were heartbreaking, right? There's food deserts in parts of our city with people that could not afford it. I learned this testimony that there was farmers in upstate New York turning over their crops in August and September because there wasn't a market for it. So as a separate sidebar, and I think an interesting conundrum, we work with some of elected officials up north, again, all New Yorkers, right, to get that food farm to table to areas where there's food deserts, and a new term I learned called food swamps. Jackie had an intern that did some research for me. This young man was fantastic, and I learned a new term and I learned a new thing that's called food swamps. Certain parts of the inner city in Queens, everything is prepackaged junk food, and we're now working on a huge project with New York State farmers to bring, food, poultry, what have you, grown in New York State down to our businesses and down to our people in Queens. So we're hoping that that is one of the positive outcomes of this thing. But just again, somewhat anecdotal and nothing to do with the Triple P, but just give folks out there an idea of all that's changed. Before we kind of wrap it up, we've got a few minutes left. I want to see if we got any more questions here. Here's one. Do Triple P loans cover paid sick leave? Do Triple P loans cover paid sick leave?
That's a good question. You're talking about would paid sick leave qualify for forgiveness?
Correct.
I believe if it's running through your payroll, that it probably would. That's you're paying somebody, whether or not they're there or they're out sick, that's part of your payroll. And that's gonna qualify for the forgiveness. I'm 90% sure. I'll double check, and if it's different, I'll let you know. But
That's great.
Yeah.
Here's one that flies in the face of what I think Robert and Chris have been trying to let people know. We have a Triple P loan that is under 50,000. We have not used any of the money for payroll yet. Is there any talk of extending the covered period further? We have gone beyond 24 weeks already. Robert, you want to take that one real quick?
I mean, there's been talk about adjusting it, but it's part of the bickering that's going on. I would ask why that they haven't spent that money yet. I mean, payroll is the number one thing they should be spending the money on.
Right.
And you want to spend the highest percentage on payroll and a lower percentage on some of the other expenses. That
it has to be at least 60%.
60%, correct. Just as an aside, I had my own loan, and in the beginning there was all kinds of transportation and a whole list of things, and I was all fired up about it. I said, I'm going to go get myself a car wash on Uncle Sam.
Right.
The rules changed and they were scaling it back. So I actually put money back into the account. I'm using it 100% for payroll just to make it clean and easy. That's personally.
So one of the things I want to do is I talk all the time at the chamber about we are still living and working and breathing in the greatest country on earth. And some days at the chamber we're always capitalists. Some days is with a big C and some days is with a small c. For purposes of you guys, I want to get my members and my friends who are members of the chamber, business, right? Number one, and take care of my members. And I want to connect people. Robert, would you mind singing out? We can see it over your right ear, your phone number and email address. But could you sing out was it 917-359-3985?
Yes, 917-359-3985. I put it in the chat. You could also email me at rob@insurancedoctor.us, U as in United, S as in States. I'm happy to talk to people, and I probably have done 150 to 200 strategy sessions since March. It's been great.
And I can tell you, folks, Robert's a good man, and I don't mean that like in a wishy-washy kind of a warm and fuzzy kind of a way. You got a problem, the meter doesn't run. He just talk to you. He'll help you out and figure out what the best way to go is. I hope you don't mind me saying that, Robert. You've been great.
No, I appreciate that, and we have a team of advisors. And, I get asked a lot of questions that have nothing to do with insurance, but we will find the answer.
Robert, thank you. And now for Chris, same thing. Tell me about the best number to reach you at, whatever number you prefer to give out, and your email address.
Yes, it's in the chat. It's 516-417-8421. And the email address is Calabrese. So my first initial and then my last name, Calabrese, at calabresecpa.net, which is also, I put that in the chat as well, kind of up towards the top of the chat there.
That's
Um,
terrific. We're gonna need a break because our time is almost out. But I wanted folks to know how much I appreciate all of you jumping on board for this presentation. Robert and Chris, it goes without saying, but thanks for all you do. I mean, there's business and then there's saving people's businesses. If I told the audience, if they heard that I get 5, 10, 15 calls a week from adult men and women begging for help and begging for guidance and assistance, these are tough times. I do think that no matter who wins the election, better times are coming in general when it comes to seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm keeping my thoughts and good wishes for an antidote, for a vaccine as we move forward. And I ask people, most importantly, to shop local and buy local, because the local business or store you save may be your own, in your hometown, in your neighborhood, and on your block. So with that said, I want to thank Jackie Donato for her always expert work and dedication to getting this message out there. Chris, it was a great pleasure seeing you.
my pleasure.
Robert, my pleasure totally. And I'll close with "Let's go Mets."
Let's go.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Take
Thank
care.
you to the
Well,
chamber
Thank
for having
you.
these events.
Our pleasure. Thanks so much.